ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland.
Now we're talking.
I'm Ashwin here with you until 10 o'clock tonight, filling in for Beck. And now we are going to be talking about projecting in particular, because psychologists say that if you have certain repressed, dark or negative thoughts about yourself, you might not express them, you might not feel that you possess them, but you might feel others possess them, and you project them, you accuse them of having certain thoughts and feelings that are actually within you. So it's not the healthiest thing to be doing. So I thought we could bring a psychologist in to help us discover more about what is going on with projection and what we can do about it. You're joined by Dr. Rachel Hannam, who's a psychologist at North Brisbane Psychologists. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ashwin. How are you?
Good, thank you. Can you clarify a bit more about what's going on when we project?
Oh, it's such a big and complicated topic. But just to simplify it down, we often hear people say that how people behave towards us reflects more about how they feel about themselves than it does about us. So as you said, we may have bothersome qualities, feelings, thoughts, ideas inside of us that we are not aware of or don't wish to look at, and we attribute those to somebody else. Keep in mind, though, that we can attribute positive qualities onto someone else. So this is known as complementary or positive projection. And also the other form of projection is when we assume that someone else is like us, thinks like us, is as competent as us, likes the things that we like. So there's many ways in which we're not clear on what's inside of us, and so we assume that it's out there, or we see it out there in other people.
What's the effect of this on human relationships?
Well, because sometimes this manifests as criticisms, even bullying behaviour, shaming behaviour, judgments, gossip, stereotypes, homophobia, racism, which is all projection of, our fears of the unknown when we don't understand something. It's an unconscious response. So it does create a lot of interpersonal conflict.
So if it is unconscious, can we get to it? Can we do something about it?
We certainly can. If we think we're having a disproportionate or unexpected response to somebody. I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, I worked with two other psychologists in a small team, and one of them had a husband who owned lots of restaurants, had lots of money. She lived a lavish lifestyle, never had to cook, had no kids. At the time, I was a single mother with two small kids and tired and kind of resentful about how hard I had to work. And I had this really strong negative response to this woman. I think I probably judged her as, a bit elite and a bit of a snob. Meanwhile, another colleague of mine did all this positive projection onto this woman and thought she was just the bee's knees. And I remember thinking, this is really interesting. She is who she is. I'm having this disproportionately negative reaction to her. My other colleague's having a disproportionately positive reaction to this same woman. And years later, I saw her again, and I realised she's a perfectly nice person, and I was just projecting kind of my resentments and jealousies and tiredness onto her in the form of judgments. And I was aware of it at the time. So I think if we're having a strong emotional reaction to something and becoming very opinionated or overly judgy, then we want to, or overly fearful, we want to take a look at that and see, well, this is in me. Where does this come from? If I'm judging someone else, is that quality in me? Am I making assumptions? So there's a lot of self-examination that needs to go on if we suspect we're projecting onto someone else.
Are there certain people we're more likely to project on because they remind us of someone we perhaps didn't like, or they're from a group of people that we don't have much empathy or experience with or empathy towards?
Well, definitely, because as I said, this often happens unconsciously due to the fear of the unknown. And when we don't understand an individual or a group, then we, have this desire to have a predictable, patterned world. And so, we can definitely project onto a personal group we don't understand. Authority is another kind of target for our projection. So if we grew up with a very kind of authoritarian or even tyrannical parent or parents, we may then go around projecting onto all kinds of authority figures our fear and mistrust and assuming that they're, more dangerous or threatening than they really are. So, and it depends on our background, our own personal history. If we have more shame, insecurity and low self-esteem, we're much more likely to do this. So the work of therapy is really to increase our self-awareness as well as our self-esteem, which will make us more able to see our projections and less likely to project onto others.
Do some psychologists view religion in this way? Not to question or undermine anyone's belief, but do they see God as a projection of all our best qualities and the devil as a projection of all our worst qualities?
Oh, Ashwin, you do ask the deep questions.
1 minute before the news.
Just before the news. Well, I mean, I think that we've all got this sort of spiritual or religious impulse. We all want to connect with something that's bigger than ourselves. And I think that, you know, it's very easy to take that yearning, that spiritual impulse, and put it onto a person or onto a symbol or onto an idea, and then inflate that and get very, very attached to it. And then we really project when we have the belief that other people should believe what we believe. And I want to give you a really sweet little example of this. Sorry to deflect from your religion question, but I wanted to share this story of when my son, because this shows how it develops and how early this happens. Very small children project. It's so natural. My son was 5, and we were playing a game around the campfire, and he asked me if I liked lemonade. And I said I didn't like lemonade. And he got very sad and started to cry, and then he got angry with me for not liking lemonade because it was his favourite drink. Because he was still learning, he was 4 or 5, that I had a different mind to him and that I could have different feelings and likes and dislikes. And it was an important kind of grieving for him to realise that his beloved mother didn't like something he loved so much. And so what happens is as we get older, we still do a much more subtle, sophisticated version of this, of thinking that other people should feel like us, think like us. And that happens, to spin it back around to your question, that does happen in religious kind of dogmatic views, I think.
Right. Otherwise, it's like they've betrayed us in some way.
Yeah, my son did feel like I'd betrayed him because I didn't like lemonade.
Yeah, I'm with him. How could you?
Couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Hey, what's that?
I'm with him. How could you?
Well, I'd cut down on sugar, so I kind of lost my taste for it. But, you know, it's just this kind of lack of understanding. How is it possible that this person doesn't like what I like?
Rachel, we've unfortunately run out of time, so we can't talk about the truth of religion just before the news, but I appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashwin.
Dr. Rachel Hannam there from North Brisbane Psychologists. I'm Ashwin with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Everil Compton will be joining you after the news, and then we'll explore the way that graphic design is changing as an industry. It is 8 o'clock now here on ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland.